Welcome to Real Authority. Today I'm talking about Black Phone 2, the sequel to The Black Phone, and I've been really excited for this, so why don't we talk about it? Gwen, played by Madeline McGraw, has dreams of this old campground. So she and Finney, Mason Thames, basically go there, in which they discover the Grabber is a presence that's haunting the ground, in which he comes back to torment Finney as well as Gwen. Yeah, the Black Phone one was great. I don't think I need to explain myself any further, but it was one of the best horror movies of 2022, so of course the sequel had a lot of big shoes to fill. And I don't think my excitement would have been as high if I didn't see the first trailer. It gave me the impression that Scott Derrickson had such a great idea, built on the foundation of A Nightmare on Elm Street, sure, but I do feel with the Black Phone it does make sense. Like the first one might have been mostly grounded in realism, but you always had that mystical element of the phone that allows Mason Thames' character speak to the dead. So I do feel like going in a more supernatural direction actually made a lot of sense. As long as you have great characters, great dialogue, and great scares, I mean, I'm game for it. And I was game for it. Starting off with the acting, like, Black Phone 1 had great performances, so the main trio of Mason Thames, Ethan Hawke, and Madeline McGraw continue to give great performances, although I will say, it's more Madeline McGraw's movie than Mason Thames's. She was a standout, like, she provided an entertaining performance in the first one, but this is where she really gets to shine. Like, the screenplay gives her a lot, and she absolutely does an amazing job. Not only in the emotional moments, but the horror moments, she really sells it. So yeah, she definitely has a career ahead of her. Mason Thames is already getting a career. How to Train Your Dragon came out earlier this year. Next week he's starring in Regretting You. And even though he's kind of pushed to the sideline, he continues to prove why he was so great in the first one. He continues to prove why he's such a great actor. In the first one, he gave an absolutely incredible performance, and I do feel here, well, he's definitely a co-star alongside Gwen. He absolutely gives a devastating performance. One moment in particular, the emotions are so high, and he sells it. Ethan Hawke is the Grabber. It was perfect casting with the first movie, so it's interesting to see him come back here, this time as a supernatural presence. Although I will say this, he's not like in the entire movie. He's more like Beetlejuice in both Beetlejuices, in which his presence is felt, but his presence is not really there. And I do feel it does work. Like, he's less in this than the first one, but I do feel that works to this movie's benefit. Selling the idea that he doesn't need to be there in order to cause all this trouble and in order to cause all this horror. And Hawke is doing great in the role. I think that's a given. Scott Derrickson does a great job directing and screenplay-wise. The script alongside C. Robert Cargill, but he really does show his love for 80s horror movies, but he doesn't sacrifice the characters that were developed in the last movie in order to do that. Granted, it's set in the 80s, but there were a lot of moments, in fact, the entire movie feels like one from the 80s. It feels like it pays tribute to that. Of course, other elements play into that, but I feel like Derrickson is one of the main reasons why this approach works. Again, you got Nightmare on Elm Street inspirations there, and while it could have easily felt like a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff, I'd argue that it works for this character and it feels unique in this realm. In fact, keeping track with the 80s, I might as well get the other compliments that relate to that. The cinematography is pretty much fantastic. Like, most of it looks like your casual Hollywood movie. That's totally fine, but there are some moments, especially with Gwen's dream sequences, where it actually looks like an 80s film, not like HD remastered. You still see it shot on film. Maybe more like VHS rip, but it definitely does work. And I especially like the transitions between the dream and the real life. That really did work, so I definitely have to give props to the cinematography there. It was stellar. I usually give props to the cinematography when it's beautiful, but here in particular, it steals the show. Atticus Derrickson did phenomenal work with the score. Like, it sold the horror and sold the 80s vibe incredibly well. Like, I saw it in a Dolby theater. I initially wasn't. Good decision going to a Dolby theater. That makes the score more intense, as well as the scares in general. Not jump scares, more like intentionally placed scares. So the horror was really great, and the score has a large role in why. And the story this time around, I felt would work perfectly. Like, if the story wasn't as unique as it was, I probably wouldn't be here shouting its praises. But I do feel like the story had a lot of potential, and it absolutely meets it. It had me interested the entire time and caring about these characters. Enough so that when the horror comes around and the Grabber comes out, you feel his presence, and even when he's not on screen, again, he absolutely is still there brooding in the background. If I had any nitpicks, maybe the finale could have been a bit longer, but I also do understand why it feels a bit shorter, because let's be real here, I think Black Phone 3 would be pushing it, and it's still fantastic. So yeah, Black Phone 2, probably better than the original. It's a loving ode to horror movies of the 80s and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Feels like The Shining in a little bit. Like the first time I saw The Shining, that's what I got with Black Phone 2. It doesn't feel like a forced sequel at all, and I definitely do think these two movies go well together. So yeah, if you're a horror movie fan, especially considering the Halloween season, I have no doubt you'll have a good time with this. I heard it was a mixed reception, but people still called it good. No, The Real Authority approves and calls it a 10. I was never bored. I was never like off the ride. I was always invested and attentive, and maybe you won't agree with this, but I think it's one of the best films of the year so far. Sue me. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, and comment your thoughts on the movie, and let me know which you prefer, the first one or the second one. Alright, peace.